Single mom's last coins bought bread. What the CEO revealed next was incredible and life-changing. In the heart of a city bustling with life, Sarah dug into the depths of her pockets. Her hands shook as she pulled out the last few coins, cold metal against her skin, gleaming like the last vestige of hope. Every clink echoed her daily struggle, the relentless grind of double shifts and sleepless nights, all for her two young kids she loved dearly. Tonight, as she clutched the change, a tightness gripped her chest. After a long day waiting tables and scrubbing floors, all she could afford was one loaf of bread at the local grocery store. It felt heavier than usual as she placed the bread on the counter, embarrassed by the pitiful pile of coins. The cashier, a familiar face, smiled softly. They shared fleeting moments of real connection, a silent acknowledgement of their shared struggles in this city where the bright lights concealed hidden hardships. "You're doing your best, Sarah," she said as she rang up the sale. Sarah nodded, forcing a weak smile. The weight of her circumstances hung like a shadow. She had to remain strong for her children, for their future. Outside, under flickering store lights, she collided quite literally with Tom, a high-profile tech CEO in town for a charity gala. He was a whirlwind of sharply pressed suits and polished shoes, worlds apart from her life of juggling two jobs. But he paused, taken aback by the sight of her measuring out the last coins like they were treasures. At first, he noticed only the surface, a struggling waitress. But his ears caught her heartfelt conversation with the cashier about the power of community solidarity during tough times. Intrigued, he listened. In that moment, he saw more than a single mother, he perceived a spirit that mirrored the American ideal of resilience and hard work. Sarah was not just surviving, she was fiercely determined, a warrior in her own right. She spoke of her efforts to help other struggling families in her neighborhood, providing food, clothing, and emotional support. This ignited something within Tom, a desire to blend his resources with her grassroots knowledge. Together, they could uplift their community, but change is rarely welcomed. Their plans began to face fierce opposition from affluent neighborhoods fearing disruption to their well-ordered lives. Sarah and Tom found themselves at a passionate community meeting, confronting economic inequality head-on. Voices rose, as did emotions, revealing a chasm fueled by biases and misunderstandings. As Sarah unexpectedly received an award recognizing her unyielding community spirit, Tom stood by her side, admiration flooding his heart. Yet, as the ceremony unfolded, whispers from affluent attendees questioned why she was deserving of such an honor. Her heart raced and thoughts tangled, yet she felt an urgency to speak for those who couldn't. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Gathering her thoughts felt like trying to hold water in her palms, prone to slipping away. The room grew silent as all eyes fell on her, a captivating sea of anticipation. Not just about one woman's journey but a community's plea for unity against the tide of inequality. She caught Tom's gaze, uncertainty flickering across his face, an intersection of their worlds on the brink of transformation. This was the moment, a chance to spark understanding, to confront the divide. Would her voice empower a community to unite against the current of inequities, or would it deepen the division? The air filled with promise, yet anxiety lingered. What would she reveal in this moment of vulnerability? Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of countless eyes on her. She stood there, loaves of bread and dreams clutched tightly in her hands. Vulnerability wrapped around her like a shroud. The murmurs in the crowd intensified, a cacophony of judgment woven through hooks of disbelief. But her heart beat loudly, determined to break through the noise. "Thank you," she began, her voice trembling slightly before steadying. "I'm honored to receive this, but this isn't just about me." Faces in the audience shifted, confused by her shift in focus. "It's about families like mine, families who wake up every day just trying to get by. She shared stories of her neighbors' working mothers juggling multiple jobs, battered fathers holding on to hope, kids whose laughter masked their hunger. Each word seemed to linger, hanging in the air like a prayer. Tom watched intently, pride swelling within him. Sarah's honesty ignited something in the room. He could feel the energy shift, the walls built by privilege crumbling just a bit. "They are heroes," Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. "They fight battles unseen, yet they rise every morning to do it again. We can't turn our backs on them. We shouldn't." A young woman seated in the front row began to nod, her skepticism slowly melting away. The murmurs quieted, replaced by an undeniable tension, as people leaned forward to listen. Sarah pressed on, "I've lived at the despair on nights when there isn't enough. But I've also felt the power of community neighbors sharing what little they have, lifting each other up. That's the spirit we need to nurture. We can't let this divide us. Together, we can create something better." As her voice echoed through the room, she saw more faces softening in recognition. Voices whispered to each other, minds opening to the possibility of change. Sarah's words were starting to bridge that chasm between them. Then came the applause, hesitant but growing. The room shook with an unexpected energy, and in that moment, Sarah stood taller. She looked to Tom, the fire of ambition lighting up his eyes. They shared a silent agreement. They were forging a partnership, one that could build a bridge over troubled waters. But the shadows of resistance still loomed. A man from the back called out, his tone laced with incredulity. "And what about our neighborhoods? How can you justify disrupting lives that are already set?" The question hung heavy, a reminder that not everyone was ready to listen. Sarah's heart raced, yet she felt empowered to respond. "I understand your concerns," she said slowly, searching the eyes of the residents. "But isn't our strength derived from how we support each other? What if we're stronger together?" With every eye in the room on her, she realized this was more than a fight for her community, it was a challenge for their collective future. She prayed for allies not just in talks of charity but in shared resolve to address systems of inequality that stretched beyond their small corner of the world. As the meeting drew to a close, applause followed her, swelling like a tide. The future felt uncertain, yet Sarah could see a flicker of hope. And in that moment, she swore to fight for every family that felt unheard. Yet, a chilling thought gripped her: would she continue to have the strength needed to face the backlash still waiting in the dark corners of their community? She stepped down from the podium, heart racing with both excitement and fear. As questions bubbled in the crowd, Sarah sensed that this was just the beginning. What would the affluent district do next? How would they respond to her call for unity? As Tom joined her side, their eyes locked, not just a promise of partnership, but a silent vow to unite their worlds. The air crackled with possibilities, but deep down, Sarah knew the real battle had only just begun. Would they rise to the challenge? Or would they buckle under the weight of resistance? One question lingered: what would it take to ignite lasting change? The moment Sarah stepped off the stage, the applause faded, but the chatter in the crowd swelled. She could hear snippets of conversations as people processed what she had said, their mixed emotions swirling around her like a storm. Some were excited, inspired even, while others remained entrenched in disbelief and doubt. Tom watched as she navigated through the crowd, his heart swelling with admiration. Sarah had just taken a colossal risk by laying bare the struggles of her community. But her bravery also made her a target. He stepped close, ready to shield her from the overwhelming tide of reactions. Then, a familiar face broke through the crowd. It was Mrs. Jensen, an older woman who had lived in the neighborhood forever. "Sarah!" she exclaimed, her voice both shaky and warm. "You spoke from the heart. Thank you for giving a voice to the voiceless." Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched Sarah's hands tightly. "I'm just getting started," Sarah replied, feeling the warmth of Mrs. Jensen's gratitude. Each supportive interaction felt like a stepping stone, nudging her towards something greater. But the earlier question still nagged at the back of her mind, the skepticism from the man at the back. What if it wasn't enough to simply inspire? What if they needed more than words? As they exited the building, a small group gathered to talk. They were primarily younger residents, eager and hopeful. What can we do? One girl, a college student, asked. How do we get involved? Sarah smiled, a rush of hope flooding through her. We can start by organizing community meetings, discussing our needs openly. We need to unite our voices and show that this is a shared struggle. The group buzzed with ideas, excitement evident in their eyes. Sarah felt a surge of energy. It seemed like they were all ready to roll up their sleeves and dive in further. This was the moment she had hoped for, a chance to awaken not just her neighbors, but a movement. Just as she began to formulate plans, a shadow loomed behind them. Isn't this adorable? The voice cut through the atmosphere, sharp and laced with derision. It belonged to Greg Mason, the wealthy CEO of a local business who had always stood firmly on the other side of the divide. He leaned against a brick wall, arms crossed, a smirk plastered across his face. You actually think a few heartfelt speeches will change anything? Tension crackled in the air. Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she faced him, determination bubbling beneath the surface. What if we're not just a few? What if we are many? She challenged, her voice steady. Greg's laughter was dismissive. Oh please. You really believe you can disrupt decades of stability? You'll need more than community spirit to make any dent. The crowd shifted, uncertainty rippling through them. Did they really stand a chance against the established power, against someone like him? Tom stepped forward, preparing to defend Sarah, but she held up a hand. Sometimes, all it takes is a spark to ignite change, Greg. People are tired of the status quo. And together, we can be that spark. As she spoke, she watched Greg's smirk falter, if only for a moment. Could he sense the determination thrumming in the air, the unity connecting them all? Good luck with that, he snapped, turning away, but his tone seemed to carry a hint of unease. As the crowd continued to chat, Sarah released a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Was this confrontation the beginning of something bigger? Would Greg's presence motivate them to push harder, to fight back against the structures they had come to accept? As she walked away, surrounded by the newfound energy of her supporters, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of both anxiety and exhilaration. Change felt close enough to touch, yet far enough to worry if they could grasp it. Would they stand strong against the looming shadows of doubt? What would be their next move in this fight for unity? The challenges that lay ahead seemed daunting, yet the potential for growth filled Sarah with hope. And as she shared her thoughts with Tom, she could see a flicker of that same hope reflected in his eyes, even amidst the rising storm. What would their next step be when the tide began to truly turn? The next few days felt like a whirlwind. Sarah barely had time to breathe between meetings and phone calls. The community buzzed with energy, and almost every room she entered was filled with fervent discussions about how to take their fight forward. Ideas flowed like wildfire: street cleanups, petition drives, even a community festival. Each suggestion had its own spark of hope, but with that hope came a creeping anxiety. Could they sustain this momentum? The reality of their challenges suddenly loomed large again. Sarah found herself wrestling with Greg's dismissive words, replaying them in her head. You'll need more than community spirit. What if he was right? On a sun-drenched afternoon, Sarah stood in front of a whiteboard covered with plans and colorful post-it notes, but her mind wandered. The faces of the community members filled her thoughts. They were counting on her. Hey, Tom nudged her shoulder softly, shaking her from her reverie. You okay? His brow furrowed with concern, but his eyes sparkled with encouragement. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all of this, she admitted. What if it's not enough? What if Greg is right? Tom stepped closer, leaning against the wall. Do you believe in what we're doing? In these people? Of course I do. She replied, surprised at his question. Then that's more than enough, he smiled. People are ready to change things because of you. Just look at all the energy in the room. Sarah glanced around. Young mothers, older residents, teenagers all overflowing with excitement and ideas. Maybe Tom was right. Let us capture that energy and channel it, she suggested, her voice gaining strength. We'll hold our first community meeting next week. We'll get everyone together and brainstorm actionable steps. Tom grinned. I like the sound of that. You're a natural leader, you know. Her heart swelled at the compliment, even if self-doubt still threatened to take root. As they focused on planning the meeting, Sarah couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. What would happen when the excitement faded? Would people still show up? Would they lose steam? Meanwhile, news of Greg's comments infiltrated the corners of the community. Whispers of doubt emerged, many of them wondering if they could truly create change against the stronghold that Greg represented. The night before the meeting, Sarah paced her small living room, a tightness in her chest. What if they all gathered and nothing happened? The fear settled in, sticking like a weight on her heart. She picked up her phone and started typing a message to Tom, but then paused. Instead, Sarah opened her social media. She shared a simple post: "Tomorrow, we stand together. We fight for our community. We can be more than a voice. We can be a movement." The responses filled her screen as likes and affirmations poured in, one after another. As the clock ticked down toward the meeting, Sarah felt a sense of purpose rekindle within her. Maybe they could ignite the change Greg had mocked. The next evening, she stood before a room filled with eager faces, her heart racing. She could feel the energy radiate, a collective breath held in anticipation. Comment after comment flew around the room, excitement bubbling over as more ideas burst forth, yet, in the back, she spotted familiar stormy eyes. Greg had slipped in, arms crossed and smirk in place, watching. Anxiety gripped Sarah's throat. Would he undermine everything they had built in that single moment? Let us show him what we're made of, she whispered to herself, determination coursing through her. As she opened the floor to questions and suggestions, her voice caught in her throat momentarily, but she willed herself to carry on. All around her, everything felt charged. But just as the discussion heated up, Greg raised his hand. Let us hear what the spark has to say, he taunted, and the room fell silent, eyes darting between him and Sarah. What could he possibly have to say? Would he attempt to belittle their efforts again, just as he had before? Sarah's heart raced, the atmosphere thick with tension. She inhaled deeply, ready for whatever came next, her eyes never leaving him. What could he reveal that might change everything? And then, just like that, the moment hung in the air. The room's silence stretched, the weight of all their hopes balanced on a knife's edge. Sarah felt her palms grow clammy. Even those who had rallied behind her now seemed uncertain, their attention riveted on Greg, who wore a smug expression like a cloak of confidence. Wow, it's brave of you to call this a movement, Greg said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. But movements need resources, money, organization. Nothing but good intentions will get you crushed. He leaned back, his arms still crossed, inviting murmurs from the crowd. Faces filled with concern began glancing at Sarah. It felt like a spotlight had swung toward her, shining too bright and too hot. Could she match Greg's scorn with strength? Greg, we're not just throwing ideas around, she managed, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. We are building something real, something our community desperately needs. Our passion is our most powerful resource. Laughter erupted behind her, cutting through the oppressive tension like a knife. Sarah turned to see several nodding in agreement. Even Tom, who stood beside her, looked invigorated, his face lit with encouragement. Easy to say, Greg shot back, but passion doesn't pay the bills. You should learn from experience, or better yet, let me help you. The response hit hard, like a sucker punch. Sarah's muscles tightened, and for a moment, the thought crossed her mind, maybe Greg could help. But the idea felt insidious, twisting in her gut. She shook her head, not willing to concede his authority. Enough. She called out, her voice rising. If we wait for someone else to give us the tools, we'll be stuck forever. This is about change we can create together, not about relying on one person or another. A ripple of applause echoed. It was small but enough to fuel her resolve. Greg's smirk faltered, just a fraction. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental to Sarah. We will find ways to make this work, she continued, emboldened by the reaction. We can utilize our networks and our shared resources. We are stronger together. As the meeting progressed, they shared more ideas how to gather donations, plan events, and reach out to local businesses. One woman suggested a small fundraiser using local artisans, and cheers filled the air. Greg remained, leaning back skeptically, but even he couldn't extinguish the growing zeal in the room. By the time they wrapped up, the energy was palpable. People stood with renewed purpose, the shadows of uncertainty pushed aside by flickering lights of determination. Sarah felt buoyant, a sense of relief washing over her. They could sprint toward their goal, and maybe, just maybe, they could shake things up. As they prepared to leave, an elderly man with kind eyes approached Sarah. "Thank you," he said simply. "For believing in us." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. If only Greg could see what these people were capable of. They were more than what he thought, more than just dreamers. They were the heartbeat of the community, but just before she stepped out the door, Greg called out once more. "Enjoy this little victory, Spark. Just remember, the real challenges are on their way. You only have so long before the excitement fades." His words hung in the air, and a chill raced down Sarah's spine. Even amidst their triumph, fear lurked, coiling tightly around her heart. What kind of obstacles did he have in mind? With a final glance back at Greg, she steeled herself. "We'll face every challenge together," she declared. "I promise you that." But deep down, as hope surged within her, she couldn't help but wonder, what did Greg know that she didn't? Little did she realize, the storm was already brewing, and their greatest test was just around the corner. The air buzzed with anticipation as the crowd began to disperse, but Sarah lingered, her mind racing. She watched people chat excitedly, grouped in small circles. Ideas bounced around like fireworks. It filled her with a warmth she had almost forgotten. Yet, Greg's warning echoed in her mind, dragging her back to the creeping doubt that marred her moment of triumph. "Hey, you did great," Tom said, stepping up beside her, his voice slicing through her thoughts. His smile was infectious, bursting with encouragement. "You really stood your ground against Greg. I wasn't sure anyone could do that." She chuckled lightly, though her heart still thudded loudly in her chest. "Thanks, but I can't shake what he said. What if he's right? What if we can't sustain this?" Tom's expression shifted to concern. "Don't let him get to you. We've got a good start. We can build momentum. Look at the energy in this room. You've ignited something here." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd as more people approached, bringing fresh ideas and youthful energy. A local artist discussed murals that could highlight the community's struggles and triumphs. A small business owner passionately pitched collaborating for a local fair. It seemed they were all rallying behind her, feeding off one another's enthusiasm, but the nagging feeling remained. Would it be enough? As everyone began to file out, an older woman named Clara, whom Sarah respected dearly, stepped up. "I heard what Greg said, dear. Don't let his words drown out the hope in this room. Sometimes, hope is the greatest resource we have," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. "Hope won't keep the lights on," Sarah replied, tracing the floor with her eyes as uncertainty seeped through her resolve. "Hope isn't meant to stand alone," Clara emphasized, her gaze warm. "It's meant to inspire action. You've done that tonight. Believe in it, and the rest will follow." Sarah felt the spark igniting again, ignited by Clara's wisdom. Maybe together they could turn their hopes into something tangible. "What can we do next?" Sarah asked, her mind racing with possibilities. Clara grinned, her spirit lifting Sarah's heart. Let us set up those artisan fundraisers. Reach out to everyone we know. We could create a community center, a space for workshops and gathering. Without even realizing it, they started brainstorming right there. Ideas flowed like they were drawing from a well of inspiration. More faces joined in, and soon there was laughter mixed with fervent voices, but as they spoke, Sarah couldn't shake something in the pit of her stomach. Sometimes hope led down paths they never expected, risks that frightened her. Finally, she turned towards the group. I know we have a lot to share, and I want to bring everyone together. But we need a plan, something concrete. Then let us form a committee. Someone shouted. We can split tasks and set goals. We'll be accountable to each other. Sarah felt a swell of excitement in her chest, shaking off the last remnants of doubt. Yes. She exclaimed, her voice steady. Let us do it. We'll outline the steps we need and tackle them. Together. As they cheered and clapped, she felt warmth enveloping her. This moment felt transcendental, even in the face of fear. But just then, Greg sauntered back in, his smug grin back in place. Look at this. A little meeting of dreamers. Cute, he remarked, her heart dipped as he spoke, but she pushed through the initial wave of dread. Gathering her voice, she called out, This isn't about dreams anymore, Greg. This is about action. We'll show you how serious we are. His eyes narrowed slightly as he took in the enthusiastic group around her. You might want to hold on to that energy. The world out there isn't as forgiving. Just remember, not everyone is going to play nice. Just like that, a cold wave washed over her again. Sarah clenched her fists, determined not to let him dim her light. We're ready, she said defiantly. But in the back of her mind, a thought nagged at her. What realities did Greg truly represent? As the crowd began to disperse, she felt a newfound spark, but she also recognized the looming shadows. This was only the beginning, and with every step forward, they would need to watch their backs. The question echoed through her mind, would their community's hopes be enough to weather the storms ahead? Or would those storms prove to be too strong? A few days passed, and the energy from the meeting still pulsed through Sarah's veins. She had taken Clara's words to heart, rallying the group to tackle their challenges head-on. They gathered at her small apartment that weekend, a mix of familiar faces and new volunteers eager to contribute. Sarah had spread the word about their committee and, to her surprise, commitment filled the room. As they settled around her kitchen table, the atmosphere buzzed with the aroma of fresh coffee and the excitement of possibility. Okay, everyone, Sarah began, ownership and purpose creeping into her voice. Let us start with brainstorming ideas for our first event. We need something that showcases what we want to achieve. Tom leaned in, a glimmer in his eye. How about a community night? We can have food from local restaurants and feature performances from local artists. It'll bring people together and raise some funds. Everyone nodded in agreement, their faces lighting up with anticipation. There was a genuine spark igniting something deeper within each of them. Ideas flew around the room, workshops, markets, and even a talent show, but beneath it all, Sarah felt the familiar tug of doubt. That sounds fantastic, guys. But she hesitated, glancing down at her notes, where her own fears were scribbled beside their bright ideas. What if we can't pull it off? Fundraising is tough, and I don't want to let everyone down. Clara, who had been quietly observing, squeezed Sarah's shoulder gently, grounding her. You've already brought together this wonderful community. Strength comes from unity. We can't control every outcome, but we can give our best effort. Her words hit Sarah hard, wrapping around her heart. She had felt alone for so long, a single mom battling against odds and doubt. But here, in this space, she saw it. She wasn't alone anymore. It was a realization that shifted something in her. Okay, let us make this happen. She declared, her voice steadier now. We'll split into teams, one for logistics, another for promotion, and one to reach out to local businesses for sponsorships. As they divided into smaller groups, laughter erupted and ideas bounced back and forth like popcorn in a hot pan. Sarah stayed back for a moment, watching them. Heart swooning, she realized that Unity was forming a community spirit unlike anything she had seen before, but while the excitement flourished, Greg's words echoed hauntingly in her mind. She remembered the glimmer of disdain in his eyes. Universal struggle aligned with individual ambition, and she knew the journey wouldn't be easy. Could she manage this? Would the community have her back when fear crept in like a dark shadow? As the night wore on, they mapped out a plan. The spark of possibility flickered brightly, lighting their hearts, but after everyone left, Sarah sat alone at the table, staring at their notes. A storm was brewing on the horizon, and resilience would be necessary. The next morning brought unexpected news as she headed to drop off Liam at school. She checked her phone. The latest emails revealed mixed reactions from local businesses. One responded affirmatively while another shot them down, citing budget cuts, draining Sarah's excitement a little. Every step forward seemed to come with an unexpected hurdle, but just as she pulled into the school parking lot, something remarkable happened. A familiar vehicle pulled up beside her, sleek and polished, a stark contrast to the neighborhood she had grown up in. When the CEO of a major local company stepped out, a sense of intrigue gripped her. What did he want? As he approached, Sarah sensed this wouldn't be just a casual conversation. What revelation awaited her? She straightened her spine, preparing herself for whatever was about to unfold. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. Would this encounter help their cause or push them further away from the goal? One thing was for certain, she needed to be ready, for this moment could change everything. The CEO's confident stride commanded attention as he reached Sarah's car window. She could see him clearly now, an air of authority enveloping him, but something in his eyes revealed a deeper purpose. It was then that she noticed how her heart thundered, and she reminded herself to breathe. "Hi there," he said with a firm yet warm smile. "I'm Mark Reynolds. I run Reynolds Enterprises, and I came across your community initiative. Could we chat for a moment?" Sarah's mind raced. Was this really happening? Sure," she stammered, gesturing to the empty passenger seat, wondering if she should have dressed better. What did he know about her plans? Did he care? He settled into the seat, crossing his arms as he looked at her. "I heard about your group's plans for the community night. I'd love to know more about what you're aiming to achieve." A mix of pride and anxiety surged within her. "We want to foster a sense of community while also raising funds for local projects. You know, give people a space to connect and support local artists. It can really uplift our neighborhood." Mark nodded, listening intently. "That's impressive. It takes courage to gather people and foster that kind of change, especially in tough times." Sarah felt a warmth spreading from her chest. He understood her, at least on some level. "It's just it hasn't been easy," she admitted, feeling the weight of her worries lift slightly as he encouraged her to share more. "I'm worried about funding. A few businesses have turned us down already." Mark leaned forward, his expression shifting, making her keenly aware of how important this exchange felt. "What if I told you we might be able to help?" His words hung in the air like a promise, thick with possibility. Her heart raced. "What do you mean?" "With our corporate social responsibility initiatives, we're looking to invest in local projects that promote community development. I'd like to sponsor your event." Sarah blinked. Was this real? You want to help fund our community night?" "Absolutely. But I'd like to be involved more deeply than just a financial backer. I want to ensure your vision takes root and grows," he said, his tone earnest. The enormity of his offer washed over her. Privately, she thought of Liam, of their tight budget, and her daily struggle to provide. "This is incredible, but why us? There are so many organizations out there." He smiled softly. "Because it's not just about the event, it's about people like you who believe in making a difference. I see potential here, and I want to help leverage that. Then doubt crept back in, and she found herself hesitating. But we might not be ready. There's still so much to figure out. What if we mess it up? What if? Mark's eyes flickered with understanding. You won't know if you don't try, Sarah. Failure is part of the journey, but look at what you've already accomplished. You've gathered a group passionate enough to rally around a vision. His encouraging words pierced through her insecurities. Yet, beneath the hope, fear still lurked. What if they fell short? What if her doubts became reality? Let me think about it, Sarah said, buying herself a moment. I don't want to let anyone down. Take all the time you need, Mark responded, his smile reassuring. But know that I believe in you, in this community, and I'll be here when you're ready to take that leap. As they spoke, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a glow over the parking lot, almost mirroring the lightness growing in Sarah's chest. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a turning point, and that possibility was starting to become intoxicating. When their conversation ended, Sarah watched as Mark walked away, a faint hope igniting in her heart. She was faced with a choice, one that could reshape everything. But could she really embrace this opportunity, or would the fears that had haunted her all along hold her back? As the door swung shut, her phone buzzed again. It was another email from a local business, and her heart sank at the sight of yet another no. But in the back of her mind, Mark's words echoed. Fiercely, what if you try? The stakes were rising, and the countdown had begun. Could she step beyond her fears and turn this fragile dream into something real? The path ahead felt as daunting as it was promising. What awaited her next? As Sarah drove home, her mind whirled. The more she replayed the conversation with Mark, the more questions tangled in her thoughts. Could his support lead to real change? Would her neighbors take a chance on her vision? But among those swirling doubts, a spark ignited. The reality of her situation crashed in like a wave. She was a single mom juggling bills, dreams, and Liam's well-being. She tapped the steering wheel gently, an urgent rhythm pushing her to decide. A blend of hope and fear swirled in her chest. She put the car in park and dug into her bag, pulling out a crumpled notebook littered with ideas, sketches, and plans for the upcoming community night. The pages felt frail, much like her confidence. Okay, Sarah, she whispered to herself, you've been dreaming for too long. It's time to take action. At home, the air was thick with the delicious aroma of spaghetti cooking. Liam's laughter rang through the halls, echoing warmth that melted her worries for a moment. She set her things down and peeked into the kitchen. He was at the table, crafts strewn around him, focused on creating something magnificent, probably an alien spaceship made from an old cereal box. Hey, buddy. What's your masterpiece? She asked, trying to capture a bit of that innocent enthusiasm. Liam grinned up at her. It's the Galactic Explorer 3000. I just need to add these bottle caps for engines. He held them up like treasures. She laughed, connecting with his excitement briefly before reality anchored her back. That sounds amazing. A real game changer. As he laughed, her resolve refreshed. The spaghetti was bubbling, and the soft clattering of the cutlery filled their little kitchen. A sense of normalcy enveloped her, but beneath it lay the urgency of what she needed to tackle. They ate in light-hearted conversation, but her thoughts drifted to Mark's proposition. Mom, do you think I could help you with your community thing one day? Liam's innocent question caught her unaware. Absolutely. Your spaceship could be a great attraction. Sarah encouraged, realizing that her son had unwittingly tapped into one of her deeper fears, that she was taking on this challenge alone. He beamed with pride, and suddenly, the weight she felt seemed a little lighter, as if they were both carrying dreams together. After dinner, Sarah detached herself from the familiar space of home, seeking the solitude of her small backyard. Gazing up at the stars, she let the chill of the night air awaken dormant dreams. The sky felt vast and full of possibilities, like her life could pivot in any direction. What if she invested all her energy into this? What if Mark was right? Her hand instinctively reached for her phone. She scrolled to her contacts, Mark's name pulsing in front of her. But hesitation lingered. What if she said yes and it didn't work out? What if the doubts began to surface again? Taking a deep breath, she thought of Liam, his dreams and the future she wanted to build. With a shaky finger, she pressed call. The phone rang, echoing through the cool night air. She felt like the stars were watching. The line connected, and Mark's voice filled her ear. "Hello, Sarah." "Hi, it's me." I've been thinking. As she spoke, the excitement in her heart surged, a promise flowing through her veins. They talked, and with every exchanged word, ideas blossomed like spring flowers. But a sudden thought interrupted her elation. What if she opened this door and revealed something long hidden? As their conversation deepened, she realized things were about to blur the line between professional and personal. Would she dare reveal her insecurities? Could she let someone like Mark into her complicated world? As she hung up, a clear direction began to take form. But she also felt a wavering sense of fear creeping back. This wasn't just about a community night anymore. This was about stepping into the unknown, and that thought both thrilled and terrified her. The moment she looked back at her house, the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, mirroring the tremors in her heart. She was on the edge of something significant, where vulnerability might just lead to strength. Could embracing this opportunity redefine her path? Just as her mind settled on this question, a glint caught her eye, a faint light flickering in the darkness, beckoning her to move forward, as if the universe itself was whispering. What awaited her in this leap of faith, and would it be worth the risk? Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's determination transformed into relentless action. Mark's support opened doors she had only dreamed of, his presence bolstering the collective hope within their community. Sarah organized meetings, workshops, and fundraising events, igniting enthusiasm among the residents like never before. Together, they created art installations, shared meals, and mapped out tangible changes that could uplift their neighborhood. It felt electric, like they were rewriting the narrative of their lives, but even as excitement surged, shadows remained. Greg never fully disappeared. He loomed over Sarah's efforts, still questioning their motives, still reminding them of their limitations. The tension stretched thin when a local newspaper ran a piece showcasing both Greg's and Sarah's initiatives, reinforcing the divide. His words echoed ominously in her mind, "Not everyone is going to play nice." Yet Sarah couldn't back down. With every setback, she rallied her community, tapping into their shared struggles and hopes. During a particularly challenging community event, a local fair, one of the proposed sponsors backed out last minute, dragging morale down. With tear-stained cheeks, circling doubts threatened to choke her. How could she keep promising change when the world seemed ready to reject their efforts? Then she thought of Liam, who always saw the world through a lens of possibility. He enjoyed placing bottle caps on his creations, turning trash into treasures. Inspired by his unwavering spirit, she turned to her community. "Listen up," Sarah called out, her voice breaking through the dim remnants of disappointment. "These struggles are not walls. They're stepping stones. We're here, standing together, and that's what matters." Her words radiated, sparking energy within her neighbors. They began sharing their ideas, creating fiscal plans, and even pooling resources in creative ways, showing unity fueled by hope. But while the community thrived, Sarah remained fraught with uncertainty. Mark always assured her, reminding her that setbacks were part of growth. He offered guidance, but a nagging would seep in when she saw the polished iron grip Greg held over the affluent crowd, who still doubted their intentions. Then, in a defining moment, Greg hosted an exclusive gala, promoting his vision of community growth, one that directly marginalized Sarah's grassroots approach. He issued an open challenge for the upcoming grand community event: "Let us see who can really bring about change." Inside her heart, that challenge ignited a fire. She couldn't let fear dictate her next steps. In the days leading up to the event, Sarah and her volunteers worked like a well-oiled machine, a mix of joy and determination guiding them through late-night meetings and community brainstorming sessions. The anticipation grew as their vision for a true community expo became a reality. They named it Voices United. Posters blossomed around the neighborhood, and excitement spread like wildfire. On the day of the event, the sun cast a warm glow over the park. Booths lined with local artists and chefs displayed every corner of culture and creativity within their community. Music floated through the air, laughter intertwining with joy, transforming the neighborhood into a vibrant tapestry of hope. And then came Greg, donning his trademark smirk, yet the atmosphere of unity was electric, almost palpable. He approached Sarah, intent on scrutinizing what she claimed to have built. Throughout the afternoon, she met with various families and business owners, exchanging stories and laughter, holding up the framework of their dreams. Tom stood by her side, an unspoken promise of commitment glowing in his eyes. Then, under the warm afternoon sun, the moment arrived. Sarah took the stage, her heart racing, hands trembling just before she spoke. Against a backdrop of people who had supported her dreams with sweat and hope, she stepped forward to share her journey, her voice steady as she proclaimed, "This isn't just about us standing here today. It's about every single person in this park. Each of us represents dreams, struggles, and triumphs. We are building a shared future that can unite us, overcome disparity and empower us." Her gaze landed upon Greg S., who had shed his earlier bravado. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. The crowd erupted into spontaneous applause, a wave of collective support that sent shivers down her spine. In that moment, Sarah felt something shift not only in her life but in the energy of the crowd. They weren't battling against an individual. They were striving for a future, for change, for each other. As the event drew to a close, excitement filled the air, and Sarah could see the results of their efforts: new partnerships forming, friendships blossoming, and a strong foundation laid for future growth. They were not just neighbors, they were family. After the event, Sarah stood with Mark under the twilight sky, their accomplishment reflected in the dazzling light strung above them. "You did it," he said, pride evident in his voice. "I did, but it wasn't just me," she smiled, warmth radiating from her heart. "It's a community effort." And in that exchange, a quiet understanding grew. This was just the beginning. The foundations of hope were set, transforming the lives tied to that well-worn street in the heart of their city. As she returned home to Liam that night, her heart felt full. She realized that through vulnerability, connection, and a fierce belief in the power of community, they had transformed the dream into reality. But the journey didn't end here. There was much more to cultivate and challenge ahead. Still, they were ready, building a legacy of resilience, and forging a community future of solidarity. This was not just hope, it was a revolution woven through the fabric of their city. And as Sarah tucked Liam into bed that night, she whispered with confidence, "Tomorrow, we dream bigger." The road lay ahead, vibrant and full of possibilities, but she would face whatever came with the love of her family, the strength of her community, and the spark of hope lighting the way. Now, my friends, don't wait one more second to support this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, your support means the world. Comment below how this story moved you, your thoughts, and your feelings about this incredible end. And share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to be part of this impactful community, so let us keep building together.